Chapter 5. A Funny Little Hat. Walking up to the little girl, Pete asked her if he could look at the underside of the carriage. When she said he could, Pete turned it over. There, burned into the wood, were two initials, S.H. Sue Hollister. It was her doll's carriage. As Pete set it upright, the little girl's older brother approached. "Where did you get this carriage?" Pete asked. "We got it this morning for my sister's birthday," the boy answered. "You bought it?" "Yes, at the second-hand store in town." Pete asked where the store was. When the boy gave him the address, Pete hurried off toward the center of Shoreham. The second-hand shop was only a block from the trading post. Pete walked in and introduced himself to the stout proprietor. "And what can I do for you, Sonny?" the man asked. Pete told him about the empty van and how he had discovered Sue's stolen doll carriage. "Oh dear," the man said, "this is terrible. If I'd known it was stolen, I never would have bought it." "Who sold it to you?" Pete asked. The shopkeeper said he'd purchased the carriage from a stranger who was dressed in rather rough clothes. "What did he look like?" Pete asked. The storekeeper scratched his head. "Well, the only thing I can remember about him is that he wore a funny little hat." "I guess you'll have to get the carriage back for my sister," Pete said. The storekeeper readily agreed. He kept on saying how sorry he was as they went together to the home of the little girl. When they reached the house, the second-hand man rang the bell and the little girl's mother appeared. Pete spoke to her. "My sister's doll carriage was sold to you by mistake," he said. At first the woman did not know what he was talking about. Then the man explained that he had bought a stolen carriage and would have to return it to its rightful owner. The child's mother was reluctant to give up the carriage, but when the dealer told her it was against the law to sell stolen goods, she readily accepted the money she had been paid. "If I ever see that man again," said the storekeeper in a threatening tone of voice, "I'll tell the police." "And please let us know too," Pete said. "He probably has our other things that were stolen from the van." Pete felt a little silly pushing a doll carriage along the street. He was even more embarrassed when he met Joey. "Ho, ho, ho," Joey cried. "Sissy Hollister plays with dolls." Pete flushed, but went on. He pushed the carriage the rest of the way home. How happy Sue was to see him. "My dolly needs fresh air," she said affectionately, running into the house to get Annie, the only doll she had now. Ricky, who was climbing a pear tree to see about building a treehouse, and Pam, who was watching him, came running to find out about the carriage. When Pete told his story, the children became excited and wanted to go find the man with the funny hat at once. But Mrs. Hollister said they must not wander around the town. After she had gone indoors, Pete said, "Pam, let's hunt for the treasure the fellows said might be hidden in our house." "Sure," she said eagerly, "but where?" "It's probably somewhere along the secret staircase," Pete guessed. The two children got a flashlight, went to the cellar, and opened the door to the secret stairs. Using the light, they examined the stairway clear to the top, and then down to the bottom again. "I guess there's nothing here," Pete said, discouraged. Pam leaned back against the wall to rest. As she did, her hand touched a tiny button concealed in the wall. There was a sound like the clicking of a little spring. "Oh," Pam exclaimed, as the wall back of her began to move. "What's this?" Pete flashed the light on the wall. A small door had swung in towards the chimney. The children peered beyond. "A tiny room," Pam whispered. She and Pete explored the room, which was no larger than a small closet, and had no windows. If there was ever any treasure here, Pete said, it's been taken away by this time. When they showed their discovery to the rest of the family, they too were baffled about the little room. What could it have been used for? After the Hollister family went to bed that night, everything was peaceful and quiet. Even Zip, who had chased frogs near the water's edge all day, was sleeping soundly in the kitchen. But in the middle of the night, there came a strange sound. Zip was the first one to hear the faint but disturbing noise. He barked loudly and ran around the kitchen. Pete awakened and slipped into his father's room. Mr. Hollister was up. "Dad, do you suppose the person we saw at the window is making that noise?" "If he is," Mr. Hollister said grimly, "we're going to catch him." Together they hurried downstairs. Zip was still barking and scratching on the cellar door. Mr. Hollister opened it, switched on the light, and walked cautiously down the stairs, his son behind him. Nobody was in sight. The two looked in every possible hiding place. Then Mr. Hollister opened the door to the secret stair. While Pete peeked into the secret room, Mr. Hollister flashed his light and walked to the top floor. When he came down, he reported that no one was there either. Then Pete tried the cellar door, which led into the yard. It was locked, but there was something very strange about it. "Look, Dad," he called. Mr. Hollister came over. "The door is locked, but the key is on the outside," Pete exclaimed. Somebody had been in the cellar. Whoever it was had left by that door and had locked it from the outside, probably to delay his pursuers. Mr. Hollister bolted the cellar door and left the door to the kitchen open so that Zip could take care of anybody who might come into the cellar. At breakfast, the other children were amazed to hear what had happened. "Well," Mr. Hollister said, "he's a real live ghost, and he's going to be hard to catch. However, there is nothing we can do unless he returns." Later in the morning, Pam and Holly went down to the lakefront. "Let's go out in the rowboat," Holly suggested. "We mustn't go far," warned Pam. "Where are the oars?" "I'll get them," her sister offered, and ran toward the garage. Soon she was back with the oars and jumped into the boat. "Let me row?" she asked. "Go ahead," said Pam, "but only in shallow water," Mother said. Pam untied the rope which held the boat to the dock and then shoved off. Holly was not very skillful at rowing and splashed the oars up and down. Pam had to keep dodging so the water from them would not soak her. Before they knew it, the girls were in deeper water. "Oh, see that big black cloud," cried Holly, looking up. "It's going to rain," shouted Pam. "We'd better get back to shore." Holly had often seen Pete whirl the boat around fast by holding one oar in the water and rowing hard with the other. She would try this. But as she did so, both oars slipped from her hands. They jerked clear out of the oarlocks and landed in the water. Before Pam could grab them, they had drifted away from the boat. "Oh dear," wailed Holly. "What'll we do?" Pam knew she must not become panicky. "We'll paddle with our hands," she decided in desperation. The two girls started to paddle this way as fast as they could. But by this time a strong wind had begun to blow, moving the boat farther and farther from shore. The girls cried for help, but their voices were lost in the strong gale. Soon they were in the middle of the lake, with whitecaps slapping at the side of the boat. Then the shore of Blackberry Island came into sight. The wind was blowing them right toward it. When the rowboat touched the shore, Pam hopped out and helped Holly up on the pebbly beach. "Oh, I'm glad we're here," said Holly with a sigh of relief. "But how will we get home?" "Just wait for somebody to come and rescue us," Pam answered hopefully. After a light sprinkle of rain, the storm cloud passed over and the wind died down. Pam took Holly's hand and they walked along the shore together. "Do you suppose anybody lives here?" Holly asked her sister. "Daddy said there used to be a farmhouse on this island once," Pam replied, "but nobody lives in it now." "Somebody's been here today," Holly said. "Look." She pointed to a group of loose stones in the sand. It was a rude fireplace with a few blackened embers. There was still warmth in them. As Pam stared in wonder, she made a startling discovery. Alongside the campfire, half torn and soaked with water, was a picture of the Hollisters' house. "It's just like the one the real estate man sent Daddy," Holly said. "How'd it get here?" Pam said perhaps the real estate man had come there on a picnic and dropped it. She put the picture in her pocket. It was not long before Holly forgot that they were stranded on Blackberry Island because she became interested in the beautiful pebbles on the beach. Some were white, with pink candy-striped lines on them. "They look like little Easter eggs," Holly cried in delight. She scooped up a dozen of them. "I'm going to take these home to Mother." Pam said nothing, but she was beginning to worry. No one was in sight on the lake. Holly wandered off to gather more stones. Soon she saw some colored ones on the far side of a large puddle, a short distance from shore. The little girl was sure she could jump across the puddle, but when she tried, she landed in the middle of it. In a moment, her feet began to sink in the sandy mud. Holly struggled to free herself, but the more she struggled, the deeper she sank. "Pam, come quick! I'm sinking!" she cried out.